Alright, so we can finally get into starting the detailing of the helmet, so very cool, we're almost at the end. But the hardest part, I think, is this back section here, so we're going to start with that and then we'll slowly work our way back up and around the helmet. So, I'm just going to go ahead and turn the subdiv off just for performance here. And what I want to do is we're going to start by building out a guide mesh that we're going to shrink wrap everything to build this detailed section. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this top row of edges. So I'm just going to do it to there, so I'm not going to include that last one that forms the triangle just up to the end gone. And then select that bottom row, Shift D, P, separate by selection. I'm just going to select those edges that we just separated. And I'm just going to go ahead and start filling in all these faces. So I know this isn't going to work because normally we'd sort of have, a pole and everything to connect the rest of the mesh up. We don't have that in this instance, so I'm just going to start building it back from the middle. Cool. And so then we can see we're missing 2 verts down the bottom here, and in this case it doesn't really matter about the topology count because this is just going to be used as a guide mesh, so we just need something that's going to inform how the mesh is going to deform, so to speak. So we'll just fill those in, and then we've got this at the back here, so I'm just going to go ahead, fill in an n-gon, Control R, I'm just going to cut in a loop cut, and we are going to put a pole on the edge, but as I said, it's not so important for this mesh because this is just a guide mesh, and I've clearly turned off face orientation at some stage, so I'm just going to recalculate the outside. Cool, and just along the top and bottom here, so what's there, I'm just going to space these out. Oops, should probably do it for the middle as well. Just to evenly distribute that out, just a little bit more, not too important. And then we'll just make sure we have the 4x subdivision surface on. And the one last thing I want to do is I just want to select all of the outer edges here. I'm just going to go Shift E and 1 just so that it completely retains all of its shape. Cool, so that gives us our guide mesh, and actually one final thing we're going to do, I'm just going to hide the helmet. With the guide mesh, I'm just going to go to our object properties, viewport display, I'm just going to change it to bounds just so it's not in the way, and I might actually change the name from cube1 to _shrink, just to make it easier to know what it is. And unhide everything. Alright, cool, so now we can start working on the detail at the back here. So, I think I'm going to select all of this. So I've selected where that pole is, 2 faces to the left of it, and then everything to the right of it. I'm going to go Shift D and duplicate this, P, separate by selection, hide the helmet. I'm just going to hide the visor meshes as well. And this is what we're going to work on. Cool. So to start out with, let's go ahead and let's get a shrinkwrap modifier. And we'll shrink to our target of _shrink. So it's not going to make much of an effect at the moment, and I'm just going to put it above the subdivision surface modifier as well because we want it to take place before the subdiv. So it's not making too much of a difference. You can sort of see it straightens out the back a bit, which is great because our mesh is probably a little bit wonky at the moment, but don't worry, we will address all of that with this. Cool, alright, so first thing I want to do is sort of get this little detail here into our mesh. So just using the topology we already have, and sorry, I'm just going to turn on cage, that's a confusing way of saying it, just so we can actually see our verts correctly placed relative to the shrink wrap. So I'm just going to try to line up the topology that we already have with our reference image. So I can just see a corner up there, another corner here. I'm just very roughly placing these, and I'm also just using G to move them because the shrink wrap will correct our positions for us, fortunately. So somewhere around there, because then this seems to sort of have a divot down and then go out and around. So I might just drag this in a bit, might distort it a bit. But mind you, this is just the side view, and as we've established, the references aren't that great for depth. So let's just have a look at the back. So I don't think this lines up very nicely, but having practiced this already, just Going to go bounding box. I'm not going to adjust this over to the side. I just feel like it messes it up a little bit too much and you don't really get the same shape. Like even looking at it from a non-orthographic view, it doesn't really look correct. So I'm going to rely on the side view for this bit of detail here. But for this corner, I'm definitely going to rely on the back view. I think it just helps position it better. And I kind of feel like this vert is already in the correct spot, and then that sort of goes along. Cool. And just to make it easier to keep track of where we've placed these details, I'm just going to go ahead and mark them with a sharp. Not that I actually want them to be sharp, just to help go, hey, I don't want to affect these. So now we've got that, and with that I can just do some adjustments now. So I'm just going to select this edge, scale Z0, just so it's completely straight along the top. I'm going to do the same for this edge here, scale Z0, just so it's flat. And this edge here I'm going to go scale Y0, just to flatten that out along the Y-axis, because there is a bit of detail over here that we're going to cut in, and we kind of want to make sure that these edges here are parallel. And so speaking of that, let's bring that detail in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click to bring in my 3D cursor onto our mesh. Shift A, bring in a plane, rotate Y 90 degrees, and I'm just going to scale this down. Cool. So it's kind of hard to see what this shape is. I'm just going to move that plane out of the way. My interpretation of what I can see here, I kind of feel like it's got, oops, pressed the wrong keys. Kind of feel like it's, done it again, third time to jump. Kind of feel like it's going out like this, coming down, coming down. And then I'm just going to try to draw this out sensibly to make it make more sense for me. Down here, and then I kind of feel like it's got like a 45-degree connecting point, something like that. So that's the shape that I sort of envision for it. I don't know if that's correct, but that's just what I'm thinking. So yeah, sorry, we'll bring in the plane, rotate Y 90 degrees. I'm just going to scale this down. And I'm just going to align the top left-hand corner with where I believe the top left-hand corner of that bit of detail is. Cool. And so then I'm just very simply just going to trace out the basic look of that shape. I'll drag that out a bit. And then instead of trying to like drag this vert in based on the reference image, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to subdivide this once. And then I'm just going to merge this right bottom vert to the middle. So just merge at last. And that's given me roughly the shape that I'm looking for. Like that. Cool, so in object mode, I'm just going to go origin to geometry. And then I'm not going to actually position this where it is on the reference image, just because I don't think it worked well for our mesh. What I'm going to do instead, I'm just going to turn off the subdiv for a second there. I've just turned that off so I can see where those sharp edges are here a bit better. Just makes it easier. What I'm going to do instead, is I'm going to try to position it like halfway between the curve detail here and this straight line on this little bit of detail that we've just blocked out. So I'm just going to push that somewhere roughly into the middle. So about there, I'm just eyeballing it. I think that should be good. Cool. So what we can do now in our snapping tools, let's just enable face snapping and let's go align rotation to target. I'm just going to press G, hold down control, and that's just going to snap our mesh to the same rotation as the face that we've held control on. And then just in our normal transform orientation, I might just make a slight adjustment on this just to make it a little bit more central. Pull it out on the Z-axis, and I'm just going to extrude and push it back on the Z-axis. Just going to flip the normals here. And we're going to do a Boolean cut into this, which I know I don't normally do, but in this instance, I think it's the best way to do it. So let's select the mesh at the back here. It's going to collapse these modifiers. And we'll add a modifier, we'll get a Boolean. And we'll use the object, I'll just use the eyedropper, get the plane. And it's a bit hard to see how the Boolean's working here, so similar to the shrinkwrap, I'm just going to change our viewport display, to bounds. And now we can see that's cutting through. Now, you might get it where it's actually cutting and leaving some of the mesh in the back here. Yeah, you might get something like this. If you don't worry, we can clean it up later, but if it is happening, just make sure you've actually got a face filled in at the back of your mesh as well. That should just prevent any of the cut through occurring there. I don't know if that's the correct term for it, but so I'm just going to go ahead and select this. So I think this is in a good spot. Might just very slightly adjust it. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply the boolean. So just Control A on the boolean. I'm not too fussed about it. I think roughly from what I can see, I think this is all right. So I'm also just going to delete our boolean mesh. I'd probably recommend keeping it just in case, and maybe even making a duplicate of this mesh before the boolean, just in case you make any mistakes here. But hopefully what I show you was fairly comprehensive to clean this shape up properly. Cool, so this is an absolute mess. This is no fun to work with. So let's just do a little bit of basic cleanup here. So I'm just going to dissolve this vertice. I'm just going to merge these ones up into this top left-hand corner. And the goal that I'm going for here, sorry, just to explain, I'm trying to just retain the original geometry that we had, which was these 5 vertices. So anything else is not needed in my eyes. It will, yes, destroy the curvature of the detail, but since we've got that shrink wrap here, right, the more detail that we start adding in, or the more verts, I should say, that we start adding in, it'll start to reconform to that shape. So I just want to make sure I keep all these. I'm just going to dissolve that vert, merge it last, select these 3, merge it last, push that up there. And I'm not too worried at the moment about nice clean topology. I just want to get the shape sort of sorted out, and then we can worry about everything else afterwards. What's going on here? I might select those, merge it last. Cool. Okay, so this is, you know, quote unquote cleaned, at least as far as getting this shape is concerned. So I'm just going to slide this down. Oops. Cool. So before we sort of iterate more on this shape here, I want to build in one more bit of detail, and that's just this little extrusion at the back here. And we're going to go a little bit off script with the reference, because it sits rather low down to this bottom edge here. And I found in my practice when I was trying to get this to work, you get a lot of pinching down on this bottom left-hand corner here. And it's just because of how close this bottom edge is to this edge here. So when we subdivide it, all the topology sort of gets just cramped up in that space. We can fix it. It's a bit of a pain. Don't think it's really worth the time. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to shift this bit of detail just up a bit so it's just a little bit more in the center as opposed to further down the bottom. But let's do it as opposed to me talk about it. So I'm just going to go scale Z, whoops, in global transform, scale Z 0. And to make this easy, let's just go ahead. I'm just going to space out all these verts. So now they're sitting in the center. Select them. And actually, what I'll do, sorry, I'll just bring it down just so roughly it's roughly in the middle of this detail. Then I'll go Control B, bevel it out. Now I've got the right sort of shape, then I'll pull it up, and just somewhere around the middle. That's probably not exact, just eyeballed it, but that's alright. And I'm just going to dissolve that vert at the end there, because I don't need it. And these have all sort of skewed a little bit. I'm just going to go individual origins, SX0. Great, that didn't work. Bounding box SX0. Okay, they are not flattening out. That would just be because of the shrink wrap. We can fix that up in a bit. That's fine. Alright, so let's just start to build in some more topology. And you'll notice, since we've added this little bit of detail in, it's not detailed yet, but the extra topology, we now have something to connect up to this vertice over here. So I'm just going to use my knife tool, cut that in. And similarly, I'm just going to mark these edges as a sharp, just so I know where they are. So now we've got that all blocked out. And then I just want to fill in a face on here, but I do want to do it in quads. And you'll probably notice there's going to be a little bit of an issue here, right? Because the outer perimeter of this shape, right, that's the amount of verts that are currently on the Recon helmet, and that's the amount of verts that will perfectly merge back. Adding all this detail in, I promise you that's not going to happen. We are going to add a lot of topology in here that we are then going to need to figure out how to resolve back into the helmet. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that. But there is a way to go about it. Well, I'll discuss that at the end, but just to sort of make a point of that. So I'm just going to cut and invert there, invert here. Let's go J, and then I can just fill in 2 quads there. And I'm not going to worry about spacing and relaxing things on the side here just at the moment. I just don't think I need to just yet. And I'm just going to do an inset here. And then similarly, I'm going to select all of the faces here. So just all the ones on the inside of the sharps, pretty much. And we'll do an inset B to do it to bounds. And yes, I do want it terminating at the bottom as well as in the middle. And just something like that. Cool. Alright, so with those details insetted now, what I want you to do is come over to the shrink wrap, Control A to apply it. Then if we come back into edit mode, what we can do is we can start to actually put these details in as opposed to them just being like placeholder topology. So I'm just going to push this back in on the normal Z axes. So just something like that. And then for these faces here, I'm just going to do another, I'm going to use Alt and S, my bad. And just push these in a little bit, just give them a little bit of depth. So somewhere around there looks good. And I don't think I need those sharps anymore, so what I'm going to do is I'll select one of them, Shift G, select similar by sharpness, Shift E 0.55, and then Control E and clear the sharps. So now we've got creases so that we can put our subdivision on and do our subdivision surface modeling. So if we have a look at this, it doesn't look great at the moment, and that's because we don't have enough creases marked. So let's just go fix up these ones on the corners of everything and around on this detail here as well. Shift E 0.55. Let's have a look at that. Cool. So still doesn't look nice, but you know, it's a starting point, right? So the biggest challenge here is actually trying to get all of these. See how this smooths out a lot? Trying to crease them up so that they're nice and harsh corners as opposed to looking like this, because when we go to bake our high poly down to our low poly, this won't look particularly nice. But anyway, that's a future problem. So I just want to address a few things here. So I don't think these are properly parallel to one another. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to global orientation. Actually, no, sorry, my bad. I forgot one step. Before we do that, I just want to select all of these faces that we've just pushed in, so all of the quote-unquote detail. And let's go to our data panel here. I've already got a vertex group for some reason. I'll just remove it. You probably shouldn't have any, or you might, I can't remember now. But let's just go ahead, add in a vertex group and assign to these faces. So this is how it should look in weight paint mode. What we're going to do is we're going to bring in another shrinkwrap modifier, because we don't want to distort this mesh, right? And we'll go shrink. It's destroyed all of our detail, but if you remember from the visor, we can use groups. So I'll just use this group here. This still doesn't look nice at all. It looks really funky. We'll just invert the influence. And now we're getting nice smooth shading on the outer parts here, and the inner parts are all left alone. And I'm just going to put that above the subdivision surface modifier, and that will bring our nice hard edges back. Cool, so now I can go ahead and do the edit I was about to do. Yeah, so these edges here, they're not quite parallel, and I think it just looks a little bit wonky at the moment. It doesn't look nice. So I'm just going to select that edge, make sure I'm in global transformation, SY0. And I'll do the same for the inner edge, SY0, just so that those are parallel to themselves. And I'm just going to do the same for this edge here, so SY0 and the inner edge. Cool. I think that just looks a little bit nicer, just straighten them up a bit. And I never did get around to straightening up those edges, but I don't think it's too much concern. But I might just do an edge slide and bring this in a bit. And SX0, yeah, I might just straighten these ones up as well because they look a little bit wonky. A little bit straighter there. And I'm just going to test, is this top one? Yep, that's completely straight to the Z-axis. Cool. And I'm actually just missing a crease on that edge there as well. Fantastic. Alright, let's start to fix all of this up. So, what have we got going on here at the moment? A lot of n-gons, a lot of mesh, a lot of terrible topology. Let's start fixing it. So, I'm just going to cut this in, because we need a loop running through here, because we need to sort of creasen up, or harden up these edges in the corners here, because they're very rounded. So, I'm going to go Control R, and let's just cut this through for the time being. So I'm just going to bring this up and see how that's made those edges nice and hard there as well. So we'll go with that for the time being. Actually, no, I don't think, oops, I don't think I want that edge there, sorry. I was going to delete that edge, not dissolve it, otherwise it will disappear. So we'll harden that up, which sort of creates a problem along here, because now this is sort of like caving back in on itself. So we can probably make a nicer solution to that. So I'm going to use the knife tool. I'm going to redirect this edge to terminate up at this corner. And then I can just Control X and dissolve that edge. Dissolve this edge. And I think this will look better if we do this. Cool. And sorry, there's a reason I'm doing this. So all of these corners here, I think it's best if we have end poles on them. So actually, no, what would these be? These would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 E-poles on them. I think it will support them better than end poles. So an end pole, for those not familiar, would be this here. Actually, oops. I don't even know if that's entirely correct either, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's just like a normal edge. But pretty much we don't want poles like this. We want to have poles like this because it's just going to support the edge better. So we're not going to end up having a support loop around this shape, is ultimately what I'm trying to get at. So I'm just going to undo what I've just done. Cool. So that's the philosophy behind what we're doing here. And so with that in mind, I might merge this at last, which has sort of created a bit of a mess in here. Mind you, they're all quads, but I don't think they're nice quads. Let's bring this up so it's a little bit more level there. Do the same here so it's a little bit more squared off. And I'm just trying to think, because we'll also need loops running down here to further support these edges. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to add in 2 loops. So those are nicely creased up now. And we've got a fair bit of topology running down through the middle as well, which is a pain, but that's alright. And we also want to do the same for this edge because it's rather rounded. So go Control R, let's cut this in, bring it down. Somewhere around there. Whoops, pressing all the wrong keys today. Cool, alright, so I think that looks pretty good. It's all nicely creased up. I'm just going to turn the cage on again. Cool, so the topology is terrible at the moment, but at least we've, knocked off one task here. So let's go ahead, we'll just do a little bit of topology cleanup here. I'll just go space out this new edge that we've put through here. Oops. Yeah, so space that out. And you'll probably notice we're getting some problems in here. We'll address that in just a bit. But I think a good way to start addressing that is by fixing this edge up here. So it's sort of caving in on itself. So let's go ahead and go Control R, we'll cut a loop on the outside, Control R, cut a loop on the other side of it. And it's still sort of doing it a little bit here. So what we need to do is, I'll just try to illustrate this better for everybody. Let's turn on my wireframe and turn off the optimal display here. So what's happening is that there's not a lot of space here on this edge, right? And we're subdividing everything, and the crease is sort of telling the subdivision surface modifier, like, pull in more topology here, which it's doing, but there's just not enough space to distribute all of the vertices that are coming in here, so you're getting this bad pinching artifact. I don't know if it's exactly pinching, but we don't want it, put it that way. Just turn optimal display on again. So what we're going to do is we just want to sort of increase the length of this edge here. So I'm just going to double tap G, just drag it down. I know it's clipped with that vert, so I'll just do the same there, just double tap G, drag it down. It's getting a little bit better, it's probably still not perfect, so I'll just drag it down just a little bit more. And you can see now that's nicely smoothed out, so if we go ahead and put the wireframe back on, you can see how that's evened out the distribution of the vertices that are being subdivided in here. Still not perfect. Well, actually, that's just mainly because we've got two edges close together here, so we can space that out. But yeah, that's how you go around resolving that. If any of you did my first modelling challenge, that would look like a familiar sort of problem to you all. And then let's just go back to spacing some of these out. Don't need to do it there, so we'll just space these ones. And then we've almost got like a similar but different problem here. So as we space this last edge, we sort of cause that. So I've just spaced these ones. But the reason that's happening is because as we drag this down, it's trying to subdivide all the verts along this edge, and then it's trying to follow the next edge, so it's sort of like subdividing and pulling everything down on itself. So for these, these are just poles, I suppose. It's not ERN poles. It helps if the edges are more straight on, so at 90-degree angles almost. Just distributes better. But in saying that, I don't really like how this sort of juts from here up and along. Sort of make more sense if it just ran like, straight through or something instead. So let's see if we can integrate some better topology here. I'm just going to hide this face, Control R, cut a loop through the middle here. Use my knife tool, just redirect this. Then I can, I don't want to dissolve that edge, right? Well, I do, but then we're left with an end gone, so let's use the knife tool, cut this across, we can dissolve that. Now I've sort of resolved this area just a little bit nicer. So I'll just do a space between there. Cool. So we've got one of these edges creased up. We sort of need to do the same for the other one, so let's just, same thing. Actually, we might not need to do a cut on that side, let's just do one on the left, because see how large the area of these faces are. So let's go Control R, I'll just bring it in just a bit. And sort of help crease that up. And this one's not very well defined either, so let's go Control R, double tap G, and then press E. I'm just going to bring this across. And this is going to be great because it's also going to help support this edge at the back here as well. And so I might just do a bit of an edge slide here, just clean up some of the topology. I think that looks alright. Cool. So I think it's looking good. We might have a little bit of pinching on these, but we can address that as we sort of get further into it. But for the most part, I think things are looking good. The only thing I'm not really liking here at the moment is just how large these faces are here and just how much they're stretching and pulling. So what I think we should do is we should add in an edge loop through here. So one that kind of runs up and around like that. So how are we going to go about that is a great question. Let's start by throwing a loop in the top here. And I'm just going to dissolve this last edge. And then if we do a loop in here, doesn't quite go to where I'd want. I kind of want it to come back down. I don't want it to like protrude back out. So let's subdivide all of these edges here. Let's merge this at the center. So now we've shifted where the pole was, right? So the pole was there. Now we've shifted it over here. Control R should let me cut down the middle. Yep. Cut that into the center there. So now we've sort of just, not subdivided, but sort of divided up those faces. So now that they've got smaller share of the area, which is nice. And then for the top here, what we can do to create a nice flow of topology, if we just cut in an edge here, we can subdivide, use the knife tool, cut that up to that top vertex, double tap G, and just slide that out. And now I've got a nice shape going like this. And I think now I might go ahead and space and relax that out. And I might do the same along here. I might just go ahead, space that. And I might relax it too. And maybe even at the bottom here, space and relax that. It's not too nice through there, but I don't. Let's just have a look with the subdiv on. I don't think it should be too problematic. Okay, the edge is definitely being pulled a bit with the normals, and we actually do, I totally neglected that, we do need another support edge or loop running down through here as well. So I might just pull that in a bit. And then we'll need to redistribute the topology in there. So it sort of cleans this up, but we've got a bit of nasty shading going on here. Doesn't look really that nice to me. So it might be of benefit to have a support loop on the outside as well. Let's just go Control R, we'll cut that in. And I think that might just work a little bit better for us. So it's reduced that shading there, it's not as bad. What I think might help though, I don't think it likes the fact that this edge is coming out so far, and that was from doing the space operation. So let me just, dissolve that edge. Double tap G, I'm just going to slide these back in. Don't think it's totally going to fix it, but I think it will just make it stretch a bit less. Yeah, it's definitely still there, but it's not too bad. Alright, so now that we've done that, we've sort of made a bit of a mess of our topology. Sorry, I got sidetracked with looking at the topology there. And this isn't really nice, like, it's not evenly distributed. We can easily fix that up with the space operation. But we've reintroduced the same problem that I was talking about at the beginning here, where we're getting pinching down on this bottom left-hand corner, and that's because we've got a really short edge here, right? Which is exactly what we were trying to avoid. So how do we go about fixing this? So first of all, I think what we should do is just clean up the spacing of these edges running through the middle here. Oops. So just go through, select all of these, like so. We'll go ahead and space those out. So those are nicely distributed now. I don't think we need this edge running through here, right? But we also do need that edge to an extent, right? Because we're trying to support this bottom edge here. So obviously we'll pull it up over the left side a little bit more in a second. So what I think we should do, and this might actually end up having a little bit more topology redistribution than I thought. So we'll use our knife tool and we'll cut this into this bottom left-hand corner. So we can dissolve that. So now we've given that spacing back to this bottom edge, right? Which is nice. And then we've just sort of got to resolve what's going on in here. So we've got, whoops, this loop coming through here. So I can't just outright dissolve that one. Well, I can for the time being. But then, sort of left with a bit of a problem. Okay, let's just go ahead. Let's just space these out. And then, oh, actually, there's probably nothing wrong. Sorry, I'm overthinking it. There's nothing wrong with just having another loop run through the back there. So just dissolve this, Control R, cut another loop in through the back here. And we can connect that back up. And we'll space these out. Actually, should I do it to the bottom here? Let's go like this. I don't want to space that one because remember we were trying to resolve that area before. So I might just space those out, and then, sorry, one more time, I didn't have a third loop going through here on my practice, but I just realized on my practice run I didn't actually have a proper support loop for down the bottom here. Cool, so we've definitely introduced some pinching at the top and bottom verts here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab them, go to normal transform, going to turn up on viewport overlays, and I'm just going to push them back on the normal Z, not too far, just a little bit. Actually, that might have even been too far. I might just go a little bit softer, something like that. Cool, I'm happy with that. And I'm just going to, just because I can still see a little bit of pinching down here, I'm just going to bring this edge across just ever so slightly. I think that's helped clean it up a bit. Cool. And actually, thinking of this, since we've started to cut these in, and remember this area in here, this isn't being affected by the shrink wrap, so it's not inheriting any curvature. All of these loops that we've cut through here, they're all like forming coplanar faces, so they're all flat faces, roughly. So I'm just going to select between these points. And the bottom, just going to do a relax, just average them out, put a bit more curve into it, which then you'll probably notice just causes a little bit of shading issues at the corners here. But don't worry, it's an easy fix. So also with our normal transform orientation still on, just going to push this back on the normal Z a bit. And so now it just looks a little bit smoother. You can probably just see the pinching appearing here. So I'm just going to push that back a little bit as well. Smooth out the result. And I think this one's pretty okay. So we'll just leave that as is. Cool, and I might just do some very, very quick topology cleanup here. I'm just going to use my knife tool to cut a straight edge through here. Dissolve that. Might just run a quick space operation between these points. Just even that. Oh, actually, no, sorry, we did have this pulled across for a reason. Actually, I'll probably leave it there and just do it like this. I think that still works to support the edge. Cool. And actually, speaking of adjusting the edges, I'm just going to do a slight change on this. I'm just going to bring this part back a bit. Just kind of feel like that edge was just a little bit too creased. Cool, so I'd say that's looking pretty good. I think I can still see some issues down here. So I think we can sort of fix this up a little bit, because I think just if we look here, you can see a bit of pinching. So let's just go ahead. I'm not going to select this top edge just because I know if I think I do. No, we can space that out, that's fine. It's probably more on this one. If we do a space here, we probably don't want to select this topmost edge. I don't know, even there it's still not too bad. But I might not do space, I might go relax. Instead, just sort of distribute that out a little bit more. And actually, these don't need to be so clumped up on this side because these are only support loops for that edge there. Space those out. Might just run a relax on this and a relax on that. Cool. And I'm not loving how it's kind of getting this downward arrow shape in the topology, but it might be fairly negligible. We've cleaned it up pretty nicely. Cool, and these are probably just sitting a little bit too close up the top here, so I might just do a quick space here because I can just see that we were sort of creasing that up. Cool, alright, so you'd think, you know, this is looking good, we're all well and done, there's no need to go crazy and add in any other details, right? And sorry, I'm just doing an edge slide here, I just thought those were just a little bit too tightly creased. But that's where you'd be completely wrong because this is one of my tutorials. So, you know, once we've done something difficult, we'll go do something far more difficult just to keep everything going. There's a little circle detail here, and we could just model it as a screw that's sitting on top of the mesh. But, you know, that wouldn't be any fun, right? That'd be easy. So what we're going to do instead is we're actually going to model the screw into a curved surface because, you know, who doesn't want to model a circle into a curved surface like this? So, let's do it. So, let's grab this vert. This is going to be my starting point for it. And I'm just going to use G. I'm just going to roughly put it to where I think the middle is. I'm not going to use the back reference because here it's completely off. And here you probably can make a better argument for the fact that it should be extruded, but it's we're going to make it difficult. So let's go ahead with this vert placed and selected. I'm going to use Control Shift and B. Bevel out. I'm just going to turn off the subdiv, sorry. It's just going to make it confusing. Control Shift and B, and I'm going to scroll up once and twice on my scroll wheel. And so just bring this out, roughly match the size, I'm not too concerned. And then on the bevel here, I'm just going to change the shape to 0.1, and that gives us roughly a circle. But we can fix this up, and once again, if you've done some of the modelling challenges, you'll have seen this used before. So with this, we're just going to go ahead and use our loop tool's circle operation, and that's given us roughly a circle. I'm just going to go ahead and adjust this a little bit more. So it is a circular shape, it just doesn't look right from this side here. And I'm just going to go ahead and delete these verts, and I'm just going to do a slight rotation, just to sort of make these edges align a little bit better. And one thing that's always important when we have circular details on something is having a support loop, because we don't want to have poles onto our circular details. So I'm just going to press I. It's not going to do anything at the moment, so I'll press B because we had bounds on from earlier. And I'll just give it a slight support loop like that. And I'll select the outer part of that inset, Control X, dissolve them. And now we're left with this. So this gets really fun because now we've got to sort of resolve all of this into nice, well, mostly nicely quad-based topology so that this all works. So to get started, let's get an easy one out of the way. Just thinking, where did this go in my practice? Never mind, let's start somewhere else instead then. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to make some poles here, which might seem a little bit controversial, but we'll make it work. So let's cut that out to there, this one out to here. So we've made a pole, but for the time being, it's okay. It's going to work, trust me. And let's just do something a little bit weird. Let's just cut this out to here. Dissolve that edge, and we can definitely create a loop through here. So sorry, actually, let's cut this into here, dissolve that edge. We'll just cut in another loop going down, and then we can go ahead and space these out a bit. Space. And so we've got a pole there, which we don't want. But what I'm thinking is that we can sort of make a loop that runs up and around down here, which just sort of help us not have to push so much topology back down into the bottom here. So let's just go ahead, let's subdivide those two edges, and then we can merge this triangle at center. So now we've redistributed things. Control R, use our knife tool, cut that up so you can start to see how that's forming that support loop there. Let's just go Control R down here, cut in these extra loops. There we go, so that looks pretty good. Have a look with the subdiv on. I think that works relatively well. And then we just sort of just need to resolve what's going on at the top here. So let's go K, cut that up. Cut that one up to there. So then we've got some n-gons, but I do believe in my actual solution, I left these here, which probably seems outrageous, but bear with me. So let's just go ahead, so we'll just subdivide those two edges, cut these in. And so now we've got our circle, right? And it works because it's got a support loop, looks nice. Let's just have a look. So we've got these n-gons up here, right? And they are on a curved surface, so let's just keep that in mind. Let's have a look with a pretty harsh mat cap. I can't really see any distortions there, which is great because remember, as I said at the start here, any of the topology that we feed into the perimeter of this shape somehow needs to make its way back into the rest of the helmet, right? So I think this works quite well because this just means we've mitigated two extra loops that need to push back up into the rest of the helmet. Yes, they're n-gons, but n-gons aren't as evil as they're made out to be, and we're getting pretty nice shading here. There might be just like a tiny little bit of distortion there. But for the most part, I think it's pretty good. You could do a whole lot worse. Alright, so just before I go ahead and start to integrate this back into the rest of the mesh, I'm just going to space that out. And so I think that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to go... Oh, actually, hang on. Was there a bit of pinching that I was seeing? I'm just going to bring this matte cap back on. I think that's alright. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Alright. Cool, so I'm just going to go ahead, Control A to apply the shrinkwrap modifier. And actually, sorry, there was a bit of, well, not so much pinching, but just the surface normals weren't properly curved. And that was just down here, so I'm just going to relax all of this, just to make that a little bit less flat and curve it out a little bit more. Cool, so I'm going to go Alt-H, unhide the rest of our helmet. And let's go ahead and let's delete all of the faces that we got at the start. We probably should have just deleted it at the start, but we'll just go delete all of those. And we can join these meshes together now. Alright, so now I've got the fun challenge of making all of this line up. And as you can see, the meshes are quite different now. We've got two loops running through here. So I promise you, you'll probably be rather interested in the solution I give for that area. And then we've got a lot more topology down the bottom here. Obviously, we've got a bit of a bridge to gap between these points. And then a lot more topology running into the top here as well. Cool. Alright, so let's get cracking into it then. For the most part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge the vertices back to this part of the geometry, because I don't want to be moving these vert positions and distorting or ruining the curvature that we've got on it. So I'm going to be merging the helmet back to this in most instances. If I don't do it, I'll tell you. But for starters, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dissolve this edge, because since we are merging the helmet back to this detail, that edge will sort of create a point between these faces, so that when we start merging these verts, you'd sort of have... I'll just do it as opposed to explaining it, because I'll do a terrible job explaining it. So, for example, here, we want this vert to merge to the detailed mesh that we've just made. So we'll go merge at last. Now this edge isn't perfectly straight anymore. It's got a bit of a divot from where this vertex is holding that position. So that's why we're just going ahead and dissolving that, because then we keep the faces completely straight. So this isn't amazingly fun, but we need to do it so we can join the meshes together. Merge at last. And after we do this, we have a lot of cleanup to do on the actual helmet itself. If you thought I liked the space and relax operations, just wait until you see this next part. We use it so much it's not even funny. So let's have a look at the bottom here as well. So I'll just merge this at last. And then we'll go merge at last here as well. Merge at last here. Right, so I'm going to cut in an extra loop, cut in an extra 2 loops here. Merge at last. Merge at last. Merge at last here. And then, what have we got going on at the back here? So these are still consistent, so I didn't really do much modification to the back here, which is nice, makes our job a lot easier. But speaking of not having made a lot of changes, I'm just going to space these out. Oops. Just so that they're a little bit more rounded, because we don't actually dedicate a lot of topology to the back here. So I just kind of want to make these faces a little bit smaller if I can. Oops. Oh yeah, that would make sense because we haven't subdivided the top yet. So I'll just do that. Fill in a face there. I'll just do an edge slide here, bring that across a little bit. Cool. And then I'm going to need an edge through the middle here. Another one there. And then we're going to need another 3 to be able to connect that up. Oops, 3. So that looks pretty nice. I'm just going to go quickly do a space and relax operation through here. Space and relax, just even that out a bit. Ooh, actually, I don't really like how that's sort of skewing across there. So I might just grab this vert, double tap G, do an edge slide, bring it back a bit. Space that. That looks nicer. Cool, and then I'm just going to adjust this here as well, just bring this across a bit. And I'll just manually adjust this one as well, so it's a little bit more in line. Cool, nice, yeah, so we don't have too much topology at the back, but I don't think it's going to make a massive effect somehow, because it's not too curved, it sort of starts to straighten out once we get to the back side there. And I'll do the same here. I'm just going to space and relax these out a bit as well. Space, relax. Looks nice. Alright, and so I think we've done most of the easy areas. Now it's time to get into the harder parts. So we're going to need an extra, 4 loops through here. So we've got Control R, cut one in. Another one there, another one here, and another one there. And I'll just try to make it clear. So I'm selecting the helmet, selecting the back panel that we've just modeled. And so I'm always merging to last. These ones are a bit of a pain, okay? Because as we've discussed on several occasions, these sort of... Oh, actually, no, it's not this one. Never mind. That's coming back over this way. When we... Oh, no. We're not. Oh, sorry, I'm thinking about this area where it loops in around itself. It's alright, we'll cross that bridge in a second. Cut these ones in, these aren't too problematic. And so select the helmet, select the back panel, merge it last. Merge it last again. And then I haven't spaced these out yet, have I? Space that. No, it doesn't make any effect. I just want to check, did I cut one too many in here? So what we've got 6. Yeah, whoa, we've got way too many. I don't know what I was thinking. Because we've got 3 along the bottom here. So I probably don't need that one, probably don't need that one, and I probably don't need that one. Sorry about that, I lost track of what I was doing. So select the helmet, select the back plate, merge it last, and merge at last. Cool, so that's made something of a cohesive mesh, and oh yeah, we just need to do this one as well at the back. Cool, and we're not worrying about those n-gons, we'll just leave those as is. And then we've got these final 3 here. Okay. Yep, this is the part that I was thinking about. Alright, so this is a bit of a pain because we are going to need to cut 2 more loops into pretty much where this n-gon is. But we're not going to make it an n-gon anymore, and I'll show you why. So if we go ahead and we cut in 2 more loops, like this, and we'll just go ahead and we'll merge this up. So we'll grab the helmet, grab the back plate, merge it last. And then this one's not really playing nicely. So I might just go delete that face. It's just because there's an n-gon there, that's why. Fill that in. Alright, so we've now sort of like increased the size of this n-gon, so to speak. Like the area and perimeter's not any bigger, just the size of verts leading into it. With just the one, it was pretty okay because this is like a flatter area. But as we add more of these in, and it doesn't really, well, you can kind of just see it with this matte cap, but you can very much see it here. It absolutely destroys the shading here, so we can't go through with this, which unfortunately means that we're going to need to go ahead and actually resolve these into quads. I know it sounds weird saying unfortunately we need to resolve quads. The reason this is unfortunate is because, as we've discussed on several occasions, this loop self-intersects with itself. So we just start to absolutely blow the vert count of this model out of the water, and it's a bit tedious to clean up with all the space and relax operations that we'll need to do. But I'll see you through it, don't worry, this is my 2nd time doing it, so it is doable. It's a little bit tedious, but don't worry. So we'll cut those 3 loops in, we'll connect all this up, like so, And now we're just missing one piece of the puzzle, so we'll just go Control R, we'll just cut this loop through here. Oops, and we can merge this vert back to here. Cool, so now we've made it almost one coherent mesh. We'll come and address the circular parts on the side here in a second. What I will do, is we'll just delete these verts. I'll make that make sense afterwards. But let's just go and, let's just clean this up because this is all going to be its own isolated event. So this isn't amazingly fun by any capacity, but we're just going to go ahead and do a million bloody space and relax operations to just clean this up. And I don't normally, but I might do it for this tutorial just because I want this to be nicely renderable performance-wise for everybody's machines if possible. I might do a proper low poly of this mesh. I don't normally ever do it because I do all my rendering offline, but like this is getting a little bit dense for a low poly model, so I'll wait and see. So I've just selected all of these longer paths just because there's less of them to select than the shorter paths, or edges, sorry. So select all these, Control I, so now I've just inverted the selection there. And I'll go ahead and space these out. And just make sure it has properly spaced them, because if you've got any rogue edges like this selected and you space, it will distort your model, so just make sure you're being cautious about what you're selecting here, because you can have issues right at the end and it's really frustrating to fix up later. So I'll just go space and relax just to put some of that curvature back in. And then we're going to need to go through, and I think we did end up actually adding some topology in through the top part here. So I'm just going to hide this, select that, hide that, and then I should just be able to L-select the middle here, get like that mohawk, Alt-H, Shift-H. I don't really want this string of faces here, hide those. Same thing, I'm just going to select the shorter, well, sorry, not the shorter, the edges that there are less of, sorry. Just make sure I get all of these, because otherwise it can be problematic. Control I, go space and relax. Just even those out. And then we'll do this absolute beast of a one in the middle here. So I'll select the outside. Hide those, L select the middle, Alt H, Shift H. Then I'll select these edges because there's less of them. And I'm just thinking, this might actually cause some problems here, but if it does, it'll be good because I can show you some problem solving. I think this has already happened once before this tutorial. Space, okay, yeah. So see how this is not spaced nicely at all? Like, technically, yes, it has spaced them, but it doesn't look nice. It's just because of how skewed all of these are. So what I'm going to do from this corner here, I'm just going to cut down, so we'll make a nice straight edge between these points. That one's already a nice straight edge. This one, not so much. And then we might have to do these manually, so I'm just going to select between points. So what I'll do, I'll select up to here, up, down and around, H, L, Alt H, Shift H, and then I'll select all of these, Control I, go space and relax. So that's cleaned up one segment. We'll need to do the same for this part here. H, L, Alt H, Shift H. Oops. Control I, and we'll space those ones out. Actually, so even there, that hasn't done a nice job of it either. So what I might do first is I might just run a space operation between these points, just try to straighten things out a bit. Oops. Cool, and then I'll do that selection again. Control I, space. Cool. And then we've just got the back section here to do. Sorry, I know this is a bit tedious, a bit laborious. As with anything, there's always that part of the job that's just not as enjoyable as the rest of it. But I promise you it will all pay off. This will look... it should look bloody nice in the end, is the point. And I'm just going to do... Oops. Space those out, just so we don't get the same error. Space those out. Nice. Alright, so yeah, the mesh has gotten a little bit dense in there. Well, actually, it's gotten pretty dense all across the top, in all honesty, but that's alright. It's not the end of the world. If you're making this for a game, this might be a bit problematic. It's a pretty good hero asset, right? But it's probably getting a bit dense. And I just might do some spacing and relaxing here. Actually, I might just need to space those ones. And I'm just going to do the same between these points as well. As I said, if you thought I liked spacing and relaxing, this tutorial will be the this will be the one, right? Because I don't think I've taught a mesh quite as dense as this before. I don't think the Space Marine helmet was this dense, and I don't think the Mark 6 Gen 3 helmet was this dense. So yeah, certainly a more interesting one. And then I'll probably need to do some cleanup at the back here because that's all bunching up a bit as well. So actually, what I might do, I'm not going to do a space operation here. I'm just going to relax all of these ones along the back here. Just relax those. Yeah, nah, space is just way too much. So I might just do between these points here. And you might notice I'm ignoring the bottom edge here, and that's just because it's got detail running up to it, so I'll just show you. We could do a space here, but it just distorts things a little bit too much, so I'm just going to leave it as is. We could do a relax on it. We'll just wait and see how it looks after we've corrected this. And then we'll see if that's necessary. Space that out. I'm not loving that. But I think I'll leave it. It's probably better off that way. And then this should be the last major sort of space and relax operation we need to do. What would I do without loop tools? I don't know. I'd be sitting here all day just manually fixing these up. Wouldn't that be an engaging tutorial? I don't know who invented loop tools, but I'm very thankful for it. It'd make all this just a little bit too painful otherwise. And space and relax all that. Let's just have a look with the pretty harsh matte cap, see how everything's looking. Yeah, nice. So we've still got that pinching at the corner there. Don't worry, we will address that. Just one thing at a time. Cool. So let's finish connecting all this mesh together. Sorry, I was aware that this was going to be a longer tutorial. There's just a fair bit that we need to cover. Alright, so let's start rebuilding this section where we deleted all the verts from earlier. So I'll just fill in the face here. And we'll just go to that point so we can fill that in. It's not a great resolution, but it's going to work. Actually, will it work? I'm just thinking, how did I have this set up last time? No, that's not going to work. Let's dissolve that. Sorry. I did the wrong selection of faces. Let's start at a different... I know what's going on. It's because... So, we want to fill in a big end gun there. It looks disgusting, I know. And then we'll dissolve this edge here. Fill these in. Okay, cool. This is what I wanted. So we get a shape like this, and then let's just go ahead and space and relax these edges out. Oops. Space, relax, cool. And then what we want to do is we want to throw in 2 additional loops through here, right? So that we can join everything up, so chuck those in. But similar to before where we added a whole lot of verts to an end-gon here, We've now got another N-gon with a whole lot of verts, and it's just not going to shade nicely at all. It will... Here it doesn't look too bad. We get a harsher matte cap. You can sort of see it's like pinching in the center there, so it's just not nice. It's not too noticeable either, so you could argue the fact that we don't need to clean it up. We're not going to do the nicest cleanup in the world, but it works and it makes it flow a bit better. So just using the knife tool, we're just going to cut from here down to this corner. And so we've still got an N-gon on this face here, but we've got a quad here, even though they look terrible. And you'll notice it's probably not perfect, but it looks passable. We get pretty nice shading there. So, yeah, look, it's a bit of a messy solution. Any purists for quad-based topology are probably pulling your hair out right now and probably not loving my solution, but it works. So, you know, that's all I'm concerned about. Let's go back. We can merge these final verts because I don't want to hold up everybody's time here. So let's fill these in. And then we've got some more that we need to do at the back here as well. So I'm going to merge that up to there, merge it last. And I think I might merge this vert with this one, merge it last. Cool. Okay, so now we've got a bit of a dilemma. We've got a mismatch of vertices on the curve at the back here. What we're going to do, because I know in the middle here, right, well, sorry, in this little divot, I know we're going to fill a tube into that area for the detail, so I can afford to sort of crunch some N-gons into this area because it's not going to affect any visible shading for us. So I'm just going to hide those faces, Control R, and I'm just going to cut in the remaining topology that we need here. So merge it last. I need 2 more verts through here. Merge it last, and I'm still merging to the back panel that we just modeled before. Merge it last. Cool. And then all we need to do is we just need to even out the distribution because it's not going to look nice and circular anymore. So I'm just selecting down to the middle edge here. Select all of these. And I'm just going to do a relax. So just distribute them out a little bit, just even things out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect these 3 edges leading into the center. Actually, sorry, I might select just one more edge here. And then I'll do a space operation. Actually, I might be able to do just one more. Space. Yeah, I don't think that's too bad. It stretches a little bit along here, so I might be able to... Definitely don't want to space that, but might do a relax there. Cool. Look at that. So now we've got detail integrated into the rest of our mesh. And just before we wrap this up, I have not neglected this part here. So we can just fill in a face for the circle with F, I to inset. Oops. I to inset. I turned on proportional editing by accident. It's going to go to normal transform orientation. Goodness. It's going to go scale Z0 just to flatten it out. Push it in on itself. Just a little bit, it doesn't need to be too far. I to insert again just to make a support loop. Shift D 0.55. And now we've nicely creased that up. I might go Shift E -1, Shift E 0.33. Just a little bit. Yeah, I think that looks nicer. Cool. So, sorry, I know this had to be its own separate episode in the series, but we've got a bit of detail there. We still need to add in a little bit more detail to it, mind you, but that's an extra mesh on top. But yeah, it's looking good, it's coming together, and so in the next tutorial we can start to build out the little cut on the side here, the paneling up the top here, and hopefully get through all the cuts that run through the top. Obviously they don't look like that. So yeah, I'll see you all in the next one.